Hello again everyone, I'm Phil, and with Hopefully Nothing Goes Boom, we're making STEM resources to try and give everyone something that they can do to get involved in science at home. So in my last video I promised you I'd show you a way to get water out of a bottle a little more quickly. We talked about making a tornado in a bottle. I'm going to try and do this experiment live, let's see how it goes. I'm going to need to give up my chair to a bucket. So it's important to remember when we're doing experiments, you've got to try and keep the place tidy. So other people have to use the space after you, don't they? So what I'm going to do is take this bottle of water and I'm going to show you what happens when I just turn it upside down. Okay, so not much is happening. It's emptying really slowly. It's just a little hole in the lid. But if I give this a spin, just keep spinning it for a little while longer. You see that we've made a tornado. And all of a sudden, it's emptying much, much quicker than it was before. So there's no real trick to this. All I've done is put a hole in the lid of that bottle, just like that. So it doesn't need to be a big hole, doesn't need to be too complicated or extravagant. You just put those out of the way. So, in the last video we looked at the jar of water that you can turn upside down without the water leaking out. And this is kind of the same thing, this bottle, this tornado, okay? So when I turned it upside down at first and it was really slow, you could see some bubbles coming up, bubbling through and getting nowhere. But when we started to spin it, all of a sudden you started to see a lot faster flow and the water was really pouring out. That's because we gave the water a way to go and the air a way to go. You spin it, you push all the water to the outsides. The air stays in the middle. So the air's coming up the middle of the bottle and the water's going around the outside and they can get past each other much, much quicker. So for today's experiment, I'm going to try and do another one live, okay? Now, what about when things sink or float? Is it easy to tell? What's this one doing? I'd say it's pretty obviously floating, isn't it? But I'm going to add some more water, okay? So just normal water in here. I'm just going to pour it down the back of a spoon. So I'm going to try and do this very, very carefully. Okay, so it started to pour in now. So what's happening to that cube now? Is it sinking or is it floating? Sort of doing both, isn't it? Now you might, if you've got really good eyes, you might have seen that as I was pouring it in, there was some weird effects going on down here. Some little bubbles and some wiggles. And actually the trick is that I put salt water in the bottom. So there was loads of salt water in there. And then when I poured the water on top, really carefully down the spoon, we formed two layers. So this cube in here is actually floating on top of a layer of salt water, but sinking in a layer of fresh water. It's all because of the density of those two things. If you want to try this, you can. It's very easy. Just pour down the back of a spoon. If you don't have an object like this that might float on one and sink on the other, you can try. You might find something. But if you don't, it's quite easy to do this with food colouring. So, start it off. This nice red one. This is 2 teaspoons of salt in about 100 ml of water. So I'm just going to pour some of this into here, not too much. Just go about there. What comes next after red? It's obviously got to be yellow, hasn't it? So I'll just put my spoon back in and I'm going to pour down the back of this exactly the same as before. So we had 2 teaspoons of salt in 100 ml of red, 1 teaspoon of salt in 100 ml of yellow, and then I'm just going to pour in this final one. This is just fresh water. So again, just pour it very, very gently down the back of the spoon. This experiment always makes me nervous. I've done it in libraries, I've done it in schools, and it's always the one. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong on this experiment. So there is an awful lot of practice that you're going to need to do to get really, really nice layers. And use nice bright food colourings to make it really obvious which layer is which. And then the more patient you can be, the better. Because if you take this really, really slow, then you should get some nice layers building up.